guys, let's do Chapter 6, Section 2, Chemical Reactions. Here are your essential questions. What are the parts of a chemical reaction? How can energy changes be related to chemical reactions? And what is the importance of enzymes in living organisms? Here are your vocabulary terms, very short list for this section. If you haven't yet written them down, go ahead and do that in your notebook. Now, pause the video and come back, please. Reactants and products. A chemical reaction is the process by which atoms of one group of atoms in a substance are reorganized into different substances. Chemical bonds are broken or formed during a chemical reaction. There are clues that a chemical reaction has taken place, like the production of heat. So whenever you mix two things together, it gets hot. Or the production of light. When you mix two things together, you get light. The formation of a new gas, a new liquid, or a new solid. Substances can also undergo physical changes, which changes the appearance, but not the composition. So this would be like boiling water. I still have water, but it is just in the vapor form. Okay, so it's no longer a liquid, but it is still a water molecule. Same thing with ice. I can freeze liquid water into ice. It's still water though, it's just in a different state. Chemical equations. In written chemical equations, chemical formulas describe the substances in the reaction, and the arrow indicates the process of change. Reactants are the starting substance on the left side of the arrow, so they're the things that you start with, and products are the substances that are formed, and they are found on the right side of the arrow. The arrow can be read as yields, so reactants yield products, or reactants react to form products. Either way is accepted. Chemical equations. They have to be balanced, meaning there are the same number of atoms of each element on both sides, because matter can never be created or destroyed. All chemical equations must show this balance of mass. We must have the same number of carbons on each side of the arrow. We have to have the same number of hydrogen on each side of the arrow. The number of atoms of each element on the reactant side must equal the number of atoms of the same element on the products. So if I have 6 carbon over here, I gotta have 6 carbon over here as well. And that has to be true for every single element. Activation energy. The minimum amount of energy needed for reactants to form products is called the activation energy. Some reactions rarely happen due to the high activation energy required. So much energy is required for those reactants to change that they just don't happen. Those chemical reactions just don't happen. Reactions that release energy in the form of heat are called exothermic. I always think of it as energy is exiting, which sounds like exothermic. Reactions that absorb energy in the form of heat are called endothermic because the energy is going into the reaction. I always think of these as exo get hot and endo get cold. So if you mix two things together and it gets hot, that is an exothermic reaction. And if you mix two things together and it gets cold, that is an endothermic reaction. So an exothermic reaction would be like the hot hands that we like to use whenever we're going to be outside and it's really cold so that our hands don't get cold. An endothermic reaction would be one of those ice packs that you like crack and then it gets cold. So those are opposite types of reactions. Enzymes. All living things are driven by chemical reactions. We have to break down the food that we eat so that we can get energy from it. That's chemical reactions happening. Additional substances are needed to reduce the activation energy and the reaction time in living organisms, because the amount of energy that would be needed for these things to happen on their own, it's too high. It would just never happen, so we wouldn't be able to alive. So our body adds a catalyst, which is a substance that lowers the activation energy needed to start a chemical reaction. Catalysts do not change the amount of product produced, nor are they used up in the reaction. They just help it happen. They make sure that the two things are brought together and they can react, and then the catalyst just goes on its way. Enzymes are a special category of catalyst that are made out of proteins. Enzymes are the catalyst used by living organisms. They bring the reactants together and speed up the rate of chemical reactions. And they also reduce the amount of energy needed for them to occur. And these enzymes usually only have one specific job. They have one specific set of substances that they will bind with, that they will cause a chemical reaction to occur in. So they are very, very, very specific. Enzymes, once again, the reactants that bind to an enzyme are called substrates, and the location where they bind to that enzyme is called its active site. Factors such as pH and temperature can affect enzyme activity. It can change the shape of the enzyme so that it can't bond with its substrates. Temperature can also do the same thing. And we are done. If you have any questions, let me know, guys.